Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another great Normalizing Black Wealth series that we're doing here in partnership with UBS. I just want to absolutely thank everyone for coming into the many sessions that we had over last year and of course over this year as well, because you all are such an important ally for founders, funders, specifically UBS, but everyone who joins us, and helping to build this broader, inclusive entrepreneurship ecosystem. So thank you all. I'm truly grateful. Also, for everyone joining in the audience today, I want to just do a quick housekeeping note off the front. Just remember that we will be taking questions from the audience towards the end of the session. Feel free at any time to drop those questions, comments, concerns in the question section at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be sure to address as many of those as we possibly can. All right. For those of you all who don't know me by now, my name is Corey Hale. I'm the CEO of Culture Banks, and today we have a super exciting conversation because we're going to unpack the importance of normalizing Black culture in venture capital. We're going to be digging into the data, the long-term implications, right, that culture plays for Black founders seeking innovative solutions for raising venture capital funding. And I'm sure this is something that weighs heavily on founders' mind day after day as they think, how do we get capital in the door for our businesses? It's going to be a great conversation. Before we get into that, though, I want to start by having Jamie Sears join me. She's the head of community affairs and corporate responsibility for UBS Americas and has been our partner in this Normalizing Black Wealth series. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Corey. I'm so happy to be here with you as always. And I
Yeah.
can't believe this is our last conversation in the series.
I can't believe it either. It just, a part of me feels like we just started yesterday with Master P and with Mark Wilkins, and now we're like all of these months later. But yes, it's been such an awesome experience, and I'm so glad that we've been able to do this and grateful for your support and for this final installation, as I shall say, in this Normalizing Black Wealth series. I'd love to hear from you, what you're thinking as we get ready to wrap up this series and what you're really excited to hear about from Ruben and Lauren today.
Yeah, as I reflect on the series, I've just really appreciated the real talk and the real stories of people like Ruben and Lauren, who we'll hear from today, who are leading the way by building their companies, investing in others, and creating infrastructure and capacity, not just for themselves, but for the next generation. Our purpose at UBS as the world's largest global wealth manager is to reimagine the power of investing and connect people for a better world. Which brings me back to the reason why we came together for this conversation in the first place, to illuminate mindsets and pathways and inspiration to build and normalize Black wealth. The people that we've heard from and featured in conversations with you are incredible, but they're not the exception. We know that that was the whole point. There are many more just like them. And if there's a Black founder in your portfolio, a GP in your fund, or senior leader in your firm, that's not enough. We're not done yet. There's more talent to be invested in and hired and given the opportunity to lead. So look, what is possible when we do that. We create more Corey Hales. So Corey, I just want to express my sincere thank you to you. I speak for all of us at UBS when I say we couldn't have found a better partner to bring these conversations to life. I think your point of view as a founder and CEO and storyteller has given us the space to recognize and celebrate Black achievement in entrepreneurship and innovation, but also to learn and hear from people's experiences about how they're challenging the status quo. And I know today's talk will be just as powerful as the others as we dive into normalizing Black culture and venture capital. I think by this point, we are all aware of the investment community's failure to allocate capital to Black and Latinx founded companies. And, as a result, all the money that's being left on the table, it's, at this point, less than 3% of venture capital in the US. And then, for Black and Latinx women, as we've discussed before, it's less than 1%. So with data as stark as this, I'm looking forward to hearing from two people who are, leading the way and creating opportunities for communities of color. I'm excited to hear from Lauren Mailian, CEO of Digital Undivided. Many of us have benefited tremendously from Digital Undivided's Project Diane, their proprietary research on the state of Black and Latinx women entrepreneurs. I know that Lauren and her team have used data from Project Diane not only to elevate female founders and their achievements, but also, to continue to illuminate the inequities that remain. I'm also thrilled we're joined by Ruben Harris, founder and CEO of Career Karma. His company helping to connect people who want to pursue careers in tech, to the right boot camps and programs, and then providing the wraparound support to ensure their success is such a game changer when it comes to changing the face of tech, which is so exciting, and that space of upskilling and reskilling. So it was awesome to see Career Karma close its $10 million Series A last year. Congratulations, Ruben. I can't wait to hear what's next for their team. So obviously excited for this. I want to turn it back to you, but Corey, before the discussion today ends, I know we'd love to hear about what's next for you and Culture Banks. So don't forget to share that with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And there is going to be a lot to share. 2021 is a very busy year for culture banks. Fortunately, lots of companies are paying attention to the impact space and reaching underserved communities. And that's great for us and for the audience and community that we serve. So yes, definitely stay tuned so that we can get you guys more of that information. All right, at this point, I want to go ahead and hop in to our very, very conscious conversation, which is around normalizing Black culture in venture capital. Our excellent panelists today include Ruben Harris, and as Jamie mentioned, he is the founder and the CEO of Career Karma, and that is a platform that connects people to coding boot camps and peers broadly in the tech field. And in December of last year, his company went on to raise a $10 million Series A round with investors, including Initialized Capital and Collab Capital. These are two funds that definitely focus on investing in founders of color. But prior to working in tech, Ruben actually has a very interesting background. He was an investment banker for a while, and this is the part that's really, really fun. He's also a classically trained cellist. I don't know how many people actually know that about Ruben, but joining him as well, we have change agent Lauren Mailian, who's the CEO of Digital Undivided. It's the social startup that leverages data and advocacy. I'm sure many of us have seen the awesome reports that they put out. And the social startup leverages data and advocacy to catalyze economic growth and success for Black and Latinx women entrepreneurs. She herself is so impressive. She's an award-winning marketer and brand strategist, serial entrepreneur, tech investor, and advisor. Lauren, if that wasn't enough to be impressed by her, she's also a pioneer in the tech space as the first Black woman to start an early stage venture capital fund. She was a founding member and a managing director at Gen Y Capital Partners, and she has advised and invested in more than 40 startups. I mean, that number alone is super impressive. So I just want to go ahead and welcome Lauren and Ruben. Hey, Ruben. Hey, Lauren.
Hi, how you doing? Nice to see you.
Great. Nice to see you again as well. You made it just in the nick of time. I wish you would have been on our one back in November when we had Master P, because he did an entire costume change like right there on
Oh
camera.
yeah.
We're very, very used to people just like, all right, I'm hopping on right now. But Ruben, I do want to go ahead and kick it off with you because your background in general is super impressive, which we're going to get into, but just like where you're at right now, especially the relationship with Career Karma and venture capital. We already referenced that you guys did your Series A round at the end of last year for $10 million, but there are very few Black and brown entrepreneurs that get to the one male, or definitely not as many female, but male or female that get to the $1 million plus side of venture capital funding. So can you just share with our audience today your path to becoming a venture-backed company with Career Karma and a little bit more about the unique space that you guys operate in?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think the stats are like, I think there's like 305 black people that have raised over $1 million in venture capital. I'm not saying that to be like, oh, like I'm special. I definitely think that we're blessed to be in that position. Um, this jacket with Dick Gregory says it's a game, right? Silicon Valley is a game, and you have to understand how to play the game in order to like unlock these different resources. Um, and before starting the company, it was very important for us to understand how these types of companies are run. And it's very difficult to know that if you've never worked inside of a tech company before. Um, as a founder, um, one of the first things that I wanted to focus on was what's the best problem for me to focus on? What problem is unique to me? What struggle have I been through? What do I know more about the most? Um, and ideally, the struggle or the problem that you faced in your life is not just something that you know more about than anyone else, but it's something that is also experienced by millions and billions of people in the world. And for me, that was people figuring out what job that they wanted to do and how to do what they love. Ideally, the problem that someone has that you're focused on as an entrepreneur is a pain point that they feel frequently. All right. And then as a founder, you want to come up with an idea that can solve that problem for them using software that can grow quickly. In the beginning, you're probably going to solve it manually. Like if I find someone that needs help to get a job in tech, I'm going to call them, I'm going to text them, I'm going to email them, I'm going to put them in a spreadsheet, and I'm going to do everything that I can to help that individual get a job with no software. Right? And through that process, I'm going to learn what they felt. Not only did my co-founders get a job through boot camps, my brother went through a boot camp, and I saw him get a job making $150,000 in less than 6 months. Right. So how do you do that? How do you create a community that actually solves that problem for a bunch of people? And so once you identify the problem that you want to focus on and the solution that you can use through code, you want to come up with a business model that gets you paid whenever you solve that problem. And so for us, whenever we match people to a school or help them get enrolled that we've screened that is effective and gets people jobs, we get paid for that. And what we do is we double down on ourselves with those resources. So we don't just like make money to make money. We one of our missions is to help 1 billion people in the next 10 years. We take those resources and we invest it into our product. Um, so our premise is that people change careers 5 or more times in their lifetime. And so in Career Karma, we started off with this software that was text message groups called a squad. So we could put moms with other moms and dads with other dads and people that have shared struggle. And long story short, because I know I'm giving a long answer here, we have evolved that to where we've launched live audio rooms inside of Career Karma, which is kind of like Discord and Clubhouse having a baby focus on careers, where after someone is enrolled in the program, sorry for the background noise, there's somebody making coffee. Um, People can enroll. They could have the support during the program, during the job search, and connect to our network of 2,000 companies so they can get employed. So by staying true to that mission, people have invested in us to raise about $12 million over the last 3 years. And there's no bigger problem in the world outside of healthcare than helping millions of people get back on their feet.
Yeah, I love that. We're gonna dig a bit more in a second. I want to into like the actual raising part of venture capital and some of the ups and downs and those struggles. And as you mentioned, the game that has to be appropriately played. Baron Davis and I were talking about knowing the playbook so that you can figure out before you even have the conversation all parts of that. But we'll get into that in a second. I want to bring Lauren into the conversation right now because the work that she does at the broader group at Digital Undivided does really provides a lot of the framework for being able to throw out those numbers and statistics about what's really going on, especially for Black and Latinx women founders when it comes to them, getting $1 million or more in venture capital funding. And Lauren, investors typically invest in people who look like them, of course, and that are from their community. And with 70% of venture capitalists being white, 26% are Asian, and only 3% of them are Black. Can you, Lauren, just share a bit more about Digital Undivided's unique approach of prioritizing underrepresented women founders, along with how they are actually able to help venture capital firms create an untapped market opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a wonderful question. And thanks for having me, Corey. Nice to meet you, Ruben. And thank you for the introduction, Jamie. I think our work at Digital Undivided is, it's so important because this is the time when women of color are looking for wealth strategies. They're looking for ways to drive transformative experiences in their career, through their households, through their families. And we know that so much of that comes through career. And even when we talk about other asset classes that can help create and stimulate wealth, you can't get into those asset classes like real estate and art and investments and stocks and bonds and all these other things unless you have the wherewithal and the financial wherewithal to be able to do so. And so I'm really focused on making sure that our programs, our research, everything that we do at Digital Undivided is in the direct service and support of women of color. And it is also a bit of my job to be able to call out those who are making public statements to say that they want to do certain things for communities of color or women, especially in light of the racial reckoning and the pandemic and how that has disproportionately impacted people. And so it is also part of my job to be able to call out where we don't see that work being done from the corporations, the companies, the institutions, the foundations, what have you, that say that they care about effectuating certain change. So we as an organization have been around since 2012, well before the world realized that there was a problem. We knew that there was a problem and we have been sounding off that alarm very loudly. And since I've come into the role as CEO last year, I am sounding off that alarm even louder because of my own experiences as an entrepreneur 3 times over. But also I was a single mom for 8 years to my 2 children. I'm no longer a single mom, thank goodness, but I know what that's like too. And I know how much entrepreneurship is forced out of the circumstance for women of color, for people of color. It is not the luxury. And so our research is the only industry defining research out there that is tracking the funder-founder landscape for Black and Latinx female founders, women, and innovators, right, across the leadership spectrum and all the places in between that can help put them in the right direction.
Yeah, Lauren, I actually wanted to dive into that research a little bit more, specifically as it relates to the pandemic, because lots of companies had their various array of struggles, right, over the past year and a half that were a lot of it specifically pandemic induced sort of problems. And I know that in your research, you guys found that Black founders at 82% reported a loss of revenue specifically because of the pandemic. And right now we're seeing the economy, trying to recover, things trying to get back on track. But what do you think some of the long-term impacts are going to be for these Black founders?
The long-term impacts, as so long as I'm at Digital Undivided and those women are coming into our programs, the long-term impacts are going to be greatness and success, because the position that I'm in is a privileged one. And I recognize that, to have been an entrepreneur 3 times over in my own business, to have the relationships and networks and experiences that I have as both the founder, the advisor, the mentor, the mom, the woman of color who's trying to juggle and do it all, as the board member, as a very, very active and prominent investor in the space. Like, I get it. And I get very clearly, especially being, a year in as CEO here and being under the hood. Prior to this, I chaired our board of directors. I thought I knew almost everything about what it takes to both run this org, but to stand up the right solutions. And now that I'm here on a day-to-day basis as CEO, I'm able to really dig in under the hood and understand on a much more granular level what's required. But this is the moment in time where women of color can and should be harnessing this opportunity. And it's our opportunity to make. I think a lot of us are sitting around saying, ah, ha, ha, there's a racial reckoning, like, here's my in. It's not that easy. You might identify the white space, but you still have to say and prove why you belong, why you should be there, why you should get the check, why you should get supported. That is what our work does at Digital Undivided. That is exactly what Project Diane does, is put those facts and figures behind what we already anecdotally know to help bolster opportunities for women of color.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love, once again, I'm just going to say, I love the great work and the reports that you guys put out. Ruben, I want to bring you back into this. I know that you're not a woman of color founder, but you're still a Black male founder. And the statistics, as we referenced earlier, aren't necessarily great in venture capital, not just on the venture capitalist side. So I'm talking about that 3% of venture capitalists actually being Black, but getting them to understand, right, like why your company is so important, and why you as a founder, which is what they're investing in early on, right, is whether or not you as a founder, they think that or believe that you would be able to grow this company, to whatever size it is that it's supposed to be. And when you think about, Ruben, the broader, right, investing community and the venture capital ecosystem, how important is it, or what role does Black culture within those institutions play? And if that has a bigger like place within those institutions, do you think that's more tangible for funds that are created by people of color? Because I know that Initialized Capital and Collab Capital are, some funds that have invested in what you're doing at Career Karma.
Yeah, so there's a lot in that question. So stripping race out of the conversation, which I think is important to do first. To your point, investors invest in team. And if you're building a software company, you need to have somebody on your team that's technical. And what I have learned from a lot of my friends that come from Atlanta or from other places that want to build tech companies, they usually don't have an engineer on their team. And when if you're building a software company and none of the founders can code, that sounds like a problem, right? And you can raise money to outsource this and develop it, and but the first version of your product is probably going to be wrong. The second version and the third version will also probably be wrong. And by the time you've paid somebody else to create a product many different times, you're gonna run out of money. It's kind of like the logic around that. You want to be able to move fast and iterate, because you want to try a bunch of things. Yes, if you are embarrassed about the first version of the product you've launched too late, but you have to be able to iterate based off of feedback from users early on. And so I will go to the grave saying that the founding team must have someone that's technical on their team if you're going to build a software company, which is why when I met my co-founders, none of us knew how to code. And so we had to decide who's going to be the coder. And in our position, my co-founders decided that they were going to teach themselves how to code. So they did boot camps themselves, and so did my brother. And then you also have somebody that needs to raise money. So everybody doesn't have to be the coder. So you got to know how to talk to users, right? And how to sell. And so this starts going back into the race conversation, but I'll get there in a second. Going back to what I said before about alignment of the problem. Since we went through the trenches to teach ourselves how to code and to break into tech ourselves, and we aligned ourselves with this problem of workforce development to help people get on their feet, and we've experienced that pain ourselves, not just breaking into tech, but I went to a small school that I say it's the best school you never heard of. It's called Southern Adventist University. I had a 2.98 GPA. I pretty much should have dropped out of college if it wasn't for my mother. I was just throwing parties at clubs in Atlanta, and when I had zero experience. And back when I was in college, I'm 34 years old now, but I graduated 2010. The thing to get into wasn't tech; it was actually investment banking. And so I had to teach myself how to get into finance and break into finance, which also faces a lot of racial barriers, which is why you have platforms like MLT and SEO, so Management Leadership for Tomorrow, and Sponsored for Educational Opportunity to help Black people get into tech. But even they couldn't help me because I graduated already. So I had to crash Morehouse Career Fair and get in there. And I'm saying these things because when you go back to raising money, when they're looking at who they're going to invest in, they're not just looking for who's technical on the team. They're going to look at, why are you choosing to build a company to solve this problem? And the thing is there's a lot of people that want to start boot camps or get into workforce development, but they've never felt that pain themselves. And so since I bought a one-way ticket to San Francisco and I had no place to live for a month, and 3 weeks later I found a job and I figured out how to build out the network, like, and we started a podcast in 2016 talking about workforce development and so on and so forth. There is nobody in the world, and I can say this confidently, that there's nobody in the world that knows more about this problem than we do. So when investors are making a bet on who is going to solve the problem of matching people to the right training programs, it's us, right? And so with that said, going back to like adding more notches on your belt as a Black founder, you want to also work at tech companies that are known or that have credibility. So once you've thought about the problem that you want to solve, I was very intentional. I wanted to work at companies that had a CEO that had the problems themselves, solving a problem further down Maslow's hierarchy of needs, backed by top tier investors, where I can build something that I can talk about whenever I want to start my own company. All right? And that's very important to emphasize, so that every time you make a tour of duty working at a different company, you can say, I did this at this different company, right? And during that time, I leveraged my skill set of throwing parties, and I treated investors and VCs and operators and founders as celebrities, and I would throw parties at clubs in San Francisco. And I would organize hikes, which I still do today. I would do whitewater rafting trips and ski trips and things like that to build a network, because the best networking is not talking about what you do and who you know and what school you went to. It's just Southern hospitality and breaking bread with people and just kicking it with no expectation of return. And through that process, when it came to fundraising, it wasn't hard for me to get doors open because these people already rock with me from a friendship perspective. Did I face racial barriers going in? Hell yeah, who doesn't? But I also changed my mindset to where I don't see it as a negative, right? If there's a white piece of paper and there's a black dot on it, you're naturally going to pay attention to that black dot. So it's up to me to prove to you why I'm better than everybody else, or what makes me different. And like, what's cool about tech, in my opinion, is that the weirdos are supposed to be embraced. Like, you want to be embraced, you want to be different. We take a competition that's for losers mindset, so you want to create your own lane. So if there's already a few of us in an area in a certain lane, like, double down on that. And because people smell fear, people smell like lack of confidence, and so you can't walk around with the woe is me mindset, even though it's important. You got to walk around like, you're a Black queen, I'm a Black king. And like, growing up in Atlanta, I had an advantage because I was surrounded by people that were successful. And so I'm proud to be Black. I'll always go to the grave saying that, and nothing's going to stop us from achieving our goals. So that's how we get it done. I have a mindset of abundance.
I just want a quick programming note as well. If you guys don't follow Ruben on Twitter, he's always posting like super positive, like uplifting stuff, like a lot of kind of what he was just saying right now, but more of like a daily dose of like help you get focused, like that abundant mindset that you just referenced. I'm just saying you guys should definitely follow Ruben Harris on Twitter if you're like, hey, I need to make sure I'm staying motivated and stay in the grind of building out my company. So thank you so much for that, Ruben. We're going to continue now and bring Lauren back into the conversation, because something that we talk about a lot at Culture Banks, especially as it relates to this Normalizing Black Wealth series, is how do we have these type of conversations on a regular basis so that it's not, an event, so to speak, like wealth in our communities and how we get there through starting companies, through building businesses. It should be the norm and not these sort of anomalies. But a lot of people don't even really understand, to get to that venture capital side, to, be able to make sure that Black culture is infused in that investing side, what that looks like. Because to qualify as an accredited investor under the so-called net worth test, you have to have a net worth that exceeds $1 million. And if we look at a breakdown, right, of millionaires across the US, just the US, by race and ethnicity, statistics show a wide racial disparity. And that's because 76% of millionaires in this country happen to be white, and Black and Asian American millionaires each only accounted for just about 8% overall. So, Lauren, when you think about venture capital funds, which I know that you guys talk to lots of them in the work that you do, they're primarily built with money from accredited investors. And I just told you that literally more than 3/4 of the country, those accredited investors fall into a white category. Do you think, Lauren, that it's possible to change the culture of investing when so few people from underserved groups actually have the money to invest in these funds by becoming limited partners, especially from someone who's their own fund early on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there needs to be, that's why I love the title of this series, Normalizing Black Wealth. I think it's super important. And I think that in order to change that, in order to see more investors of color on cap tables, we also have to see more investors of color getting the dollars, which also trickles down to seeing more organizations like ours also receiving those dollars, because we are creating those entrepreneurs who are going off to create those wealth building, wealth creation moments. So, I mean, the trickle down is really important. I think we see a lot of posturing, we see a lot of talk, and not enough walk, not enough accountability. And so I think that when we begin to actually give the dollars, not just to the non-minority investors, like you're saying, but also to take a chance on investors, and to also honestly become comfortable with investing in areas of business that might be unfamiliar to the non-minority investor. I think that the pandemic and the racial reckoning has shown us that when there's a big opportunity, right, people want in. Doesn't really matter if they get the opportunity or not. We spent a lot of time as people of color being devalued and undervalued and underrepresented because people don't see the value in what we create, especially when it's not a problem that is uniquely known to them, right? Then they don't appreciate the solution. Case in point, though, in the middle of the racial reckoning, if you see, I don't know, City Block Health or a company go off and create $1 billion solution, then you want it, and you then turn a blind eye to the color of the founder, right? So that needs to change. Who gets invested in as founders, who gets invested in as funders, who gets invested in as the organizations helping to create these businesses and guide these startups into the arenas that are not designed for them, that are not supportive to them, and someone who honestly is like me in a full-time job with a big team behind me, or big enough of a team. We're small but mighty. We are small and very mighty. To be able to put the facts and figures behind this and call it out, that's my job, because I am in that position where I have accomplished enough at this point where I can say, hey, this is the problem, you're part of the problem. But funny enough as well, when I start telling some of the potential funders that they are the issue, that their lack of financial support is the issue, some of them listen. And those are the ones that I really respect, where they go, wow, I didn't realize that us not pulling the trigger and supporting your work was also perpetuating the issue. So I think it is, again, back to that multi-pronged approach, but we have to start trusting that people of color can be brilliant. They can be brilliant. We don't just belong in hip hop movies and whatever else. Like, we are not, and I'm not going to let us become collateral damage. I'll end it there.
No, I mean, that's true gems were just dropped right there. You're absolutely correct, Lauren. We are brilliant. And I mean, Ruben is one of the many brilliant entrepreneurs who has at least been able to secure a multi-million-dollar bag through an investment round. But we don't need just one Ruben. We need thousands of Rubens to really move the needle, which brings me to my next question. Ruben, how important is it to put more founders, as I was just referencing, in the position to raise millions of dollars as a proponent of closing this wealth gap, so that they are able to invest back in their community, they are able to invest in funds as well?
I think it's extremely important. I think it's one of the most important things that we can do. And I think it's also inevitable, right? Just because, like, at some point, the founders are all going to look like us that want to start companies that are going to require, like, funding. And so, like, because even venture capital is being disrupted, and things like crowdsourcing and AngelList and things like that are all being introduced, solo capitalists are a movement. The funding is going to hit us at some point, regardless of what happens. I think it's important. So I think it's important to emphasize the title of this subject, which is like normalizing Black wealth, which is what you said earlier, what Lauren was saying earlier. Um, there's actually quite a few funds that are run by Black people. There are a lot of operators that have worked at tech companies that um, that can start these things. And then there's also, and there's more that could be in there. And then there's also accelerators that exist that you could take advantage of in order to start a company. Something that I hear a lot outside of the technical issue that I talked about before related to like not having the software engineering skills is co-founder, who your co-founder is. And I think this is a very important one to understand because personally, I'm not a big fan of co-founder dating because
Wait, where's the conversation going?
Just so you know what co-founder dating is like, let's say that I have an idea for a company. There's a lot of people that talk about co-founder dating, kind of like speed dating, where like pick a co-founder. Here's all these talented people. Pick somebody random that will work well with you, or like get to know them shortly. It works sometimes, but the reason why I think it's important to understand this, and the reason why they use the word dating, is kind of like picking your husband or wife through just dating casually, very fast, and like making a decision very quickly. A co-founder relationship is like a marriage. You're committing 7 or 10 years of your life to, or maybe more, to solving this problem. And over 60% of companies die not because of lack of funding, it's because of co-founder blow up and not getting along with each other. Right. And in our communities, we got to learn how to get along with each other more. Right. And so as we talk about normalizing wealth and capital and building teams, not only do you have to have really good skill sets, you have to have chemistry. And people got to feel the love. It can't be this dog eat dog, black on black, like fighting all the time, right? Yes, we are competitive, but I think it's very important for us to understand that. Okay. So that's one thing. Another thing that is very important is to recognize that we can fund ourselves. So now that there's a lot of companies that have gone public, you can actually, if you work at tech companies, you can find a lot of people that give you your angel money without having to go to venture capital. It doesn't take that much money to really get something off of the ground these days. So like, just so for perspective, like when we quit our job and we got rejected from Y Combinator the first time, and we had to figure out how to live, we focused on raising 150,000. And Jewel Burks, who runs Collab Capital, is one of these people that I was begging for $10,000 early on. And later on, we did our thing, but like, and I begged a lot of people for this type of money, $5,000 checks, $1,000 checks, $25,000 checks. There's a lot of people that work at tech companies that will give you that angel check. And so we ended up raising $300,000 in 2 weeks, and we're able to, and that wasn't mostly from VCs. It was through angels. And so just don't underestimate family and friends. A lot of people talk about how like a lot of people did grow up born rich. A lot of people did grow up in privileged families, but there's a lot of athletes, like I leverage athletes that I knew from my party throwing days. There's people that we know from the music industry, like Baron Davis, right? Baron Davis is a athlete that people know, that he's for the culture. Like there's ways to raise that initial capital, and just realize that $150,000 and $300,000 goes a long way, and that gets you far enough to get into something like a Y Combinator, 500 startups, or Techstars, or whatever, which I recommend, especially for our people to like really have guidance, and then go from there. So that's what I think.
Yeah, well, it's something interesting with that approach as well. There definitely are people out there that are able to be angels, and something else is that venture capital isn't necessarily always the right model, right? For your business, it may not be the best approach. Keisha Cash, who runs Impact America Fund, she's someone who's really focused on not just making sure that the companies they invest in are directly, creating a positive impact in the communities, but also the LPs of her fund, right? That perhaps maybe their check sizes wouldn't be big enough to write into other funds, but she wants to make sure that, especially Black women have the opportunity to become LPs in funds, and she's willing to work with them, especially in her fund, to become an LP, which is, that is the sort of the steps that we need from people in those positions. And, one day you, Ruben, you and your founding team will hopefully have some sort of exit that then creates a very good liquidity event, and you guys turn into, super investors, and, help to spearhead and bring on the next generation of great entrepreneurs and builders. So with that,
can I jump in there and say something?
Yes.
Okay. So I think I love Keisha. I've known her for years. I'm like dating myself a bit, but not really. So for those of y'all who are listening, I'm only but 36.
We love her.
Yeah, I'm only but 36, but I've been out this a very long time, and I've been writing checks for more than 12 years. And I have a super active and very successful personal investment portfolio of my own, and a couple $1 billion unicorns in there that I'm really, really proud of, separate from the investing I did at Gen Y Capital Partners. I think it's interesting what you say around allowing LPs to come in, or women of color to come in as LPs. I think that's really important. But what I see most of is that the women of color who have the money to put to work either want to create their own angel syndicate to do their own thing. So I've actually helped start a syndicate that I'm a part of as well, in addition to my own family office investing that I do. And it's interesting because it is still going back to that trickle down effect. So it's awesome that Keisha wants to, have in women of color as LPs, and Keisha has a really good track record, right? But then we are perpetuating this idea that everyone should have easy access to $1 billion unicorns, because that is what the larger narrative is in VC. So then you have women of color going, oh, I want to come in as an LP, but where's the fun? Why can't I get in the Andreessens? Why can't I get in, the bigger funds and be an LP there? And so again, if the money managers, the fund managers, like the Keishas, like my friend Cheryl Conti over at Impact C, like so many incredible women that are my friends, who are investing very actively as angels or who are LPs in funds themselves, we have to make sure that those fund managers are getting the right dollars to be able to participate in the right investments that are going to create the liquidity events that are going to allow them to be even able to come in at the minimum for some of these, big, exciting venture-backed startups that have a certain lead investor. There is an unspoken culture all across Silicon Valley. And it matters who leads your round. It matters who was your angel investor check. It matters who is advising you. And so I worry very much so that people of color, and it's beautiful to see us out here doing our own thing. It's beautiful to see us joining forces. It is powerful. We are powerful always. We are always powerful when we work together. But it is scary to me because if we don't keep pushing, if we don't keep calling out the inconsistencies, the disparities, if we don't keep calling out the disingenuous funders, we're not going to be able to get funders of color to get the right capital in their hands to be able to participate and become a viable funder, attractive enough. Everyone seems to think that funders are out here, picking and choosing deals. It doesn't work that way for the big, awesome deals. It does not work that way for the deals that are set to potentially become $1 billion unicorns. Those founders and those teams get to cherry pick the investors that they want, because if they're that hot, they have choices of capital and they negotiate the term sheets, and then they tell investors to take it or leave it. Most all investors of color are still out here trying to get in on those deals at whatever dollar value they can, which they normally can't even meet their minimum, simply to be able to have a win in their portfolio to A, get more dollars, but B, to be able to attract those investments. So what is it? And this is not relating to Keisha specifically, but on a global scale, looking at founders of color or investors of color, if they're letting in people of color and women of color as LPs, but they're getting smaller checks themselves, so they have less amount of money under management, and they're not seen as an attractive, helpful, supportive, knowledgeable, strategic capital to get into these big deals that could make millionaires and billionaires out of their cap table investors, how are our people going to win?
Hey,
We're going to be invested in businesses that are slow growth, that don't have the right connections, that don't have the right backing, and those businesses are going to fail, but we're going to be able to be excited that we're finally an investor. An investor in what? Do we see non-minorities walking around so excited that they're investing in money-losing ventures? I don't think so.
Can I say one more thing?
Get back in, because we're gonna have to open up to Q&A after this. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that she just said. I just want to give
I know, I'm so sorry. I see somebody here in the chat saying Andreessen just got their first Black partner, which is cool. That's cool. My mentee, Chris Lyons, love him dearly. He's incredible. He has earned his place there. It is an anomaly. It is an outlier. Great. We can celebrate it. I celebrate Chris. I don't celebrate him becoming general partner as a thing in of itself, because we don't see enough of it. He's earned his spot. He's worked really hard. He's stood up their cultural leadership fund. He's done a lot of incredible work to both put them on the map and make them relevant, and to also give access in the exact way that I'm talking about. He set up that fund to give access to Black investors, which were primarily celebrities, but to get access to top tier Silicon Valley deals. Now, we need to let that trickle down to other LPs as well. So I love Chris, it's great. But the same way that our data at Digital Undivided found 183 Black and Latinx women who have raised more than $1 million, and the press kept saying to me in December, isn't this amazing? Isn't it awesome? No, it's not, because it was the same week that Slack was acquired for $27 billion, and the 183 women that we found who raised more than $1 million collectively were worth less than $3 billion in capital raised. And there's $166 billion that got raised in the year. And we're talking about what we have seen over a long period of time. So do I celebrate my friends, my mentees, the people I love? Auntie Lauren in that respect is the little auntie of the VC world. And I celebrate that all day long, but I'm not going to celebrate and stop to celebrate and create fanfare around something, because it actually is a disservice to our people. Because then mainstream media sees us celebrating the small win and they think, ah, I've solved it. We don't have to do more. We don't have to do it again. We've got one out there. You see, everybody loves it. No. So what we're going to have, like, we got one Oprah. Okay. They got an Ellen, a Rachel. They have a whole bunch of other, and this plays out into every single industry. We have one Robert Smith. We have anomaly outliers, and we keep celebrating them, which is cool. They deserve to be celebrated for their work, but we stop to celebrate them for too long. Mainstream thinks mission accomplished. Mission has not been accomplished.
No, I agree with everything that she with that Lauren just said, and shout out to Chris, that's the homie as well. I like the subject again about normalizing Black wealth, and I just want to give a very clear example. I really like this clip from Tupac that I just put up about how he talks about how we've been asking people for things for years, and how we need to shift towards no more asking, which is or in addition to asking, there's other things that we can do that can move things faster. So a good example is, let's say that you had 1,000 people that got jobs making $100,000, right? That's not a lot of people. And let's say that they all know each other. They collectively earn $100 million a year. And I grew up in the South in the church, and tithe is part of a church. So let's say that group also wanted to give 10% of that every year. Now you got a recurring $10 million fund that you can use to fund some of these people that are working, and they're all technical, so they all know how to code, so you can build things, which is kind of cool, right? And so I think that, as you think about the numbers that is required in order to build things, even if it's 100 people that know how to code, that's 10 million a year. That's $1 million fund that you have every single year that you can take advantage of, and people that know how to code, and people that know each other, that have really strong, tight co-founder relationships, which I think is important. So I agree 1,000% that with what Lauren is saying is, we need more capital, we need more people like Chris Lyons, we need more Robert Smiths, we need more people to build companies that have exited. I think that in addition to that, we also need people that have built things before, right? Because giving people capital is going to be important, but capital, at least as a founder, when I'm looking for people that want to give me money, I don't want to just take money from people that have never built things before. And so we need both. We need the capital, and we need people that have built things before, that have reached billions of people and have had those $1 billion exits. Because how is an investment? One of the things that VCs say that they can do once they give you capital is like they're gonna add value by helping you with different things. But how are they gonna help you if they've never built a company before that's been venture backed, that has scaled? And right, and not a lot of our people have done that before. And so I think you need both. So I just wanted to put that example out there.
All right, perfect. Guys, make sure you continue to drop. I see some of you guys are dropping questions in the chat, but if you could just transfer those over to the Q&A section so they're much easier to find, that would be greatly appreciated. We'll probably be able to get to two or,
one more thing, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I really like the solo capitalist movement. I don't know if you've seen it. Like people like Josh Buckley, Lacey Groom, people that are actually like funding Series A's, and Sam Altman's funding Series A's and Series B. I'll give a Black example, right? Rich Lou Dennis, right? He had a really great exit, and then he started funding things by himself. One of my friends, I remember, like he did the whole Series B by himself. And then now he has new voices and he has these other things that he's doing. But like that's a very good example of like kind of like getting it on our own and then like going in. Like all these athletes can pull money together, like with what Baron is doing, and like figure out how to fund ourselves. I think that even though people have been throwing us crumbs, there are enough of us to put things together and figure out how to work together and fund each other. And I want to figure out how to help in that regard. So we are blessed to be in a special position to not just have the voice of the people that are trying to break into tech, but also investors and founders. So anything I could do to help, just let me know.
All right, perfect. I will say this, I'll ask this question first because it's the first one that came in. And Lauren, I'll start with you. Martin would like to know, can you discuss kind of the methodology of building strong teams for venture capital entities?
Yeah, I think, and I've been looking at the chat. I cannot respond to all of you in the audience, unfortunately. So I see some questions for me. You all are welcome to follow on social. I'm at Lauren Mailian everywhere. I do not have a weekly podcast, but I do often speak my mind. So for those of you who have asked these questions in the chat, I think the question that you had for me, Corey, again, is
that's the methodology of building strong teams for venture capital.
Oh yeah,
I know you have a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet because it is always a really difficult dance, and it always depends on like what your company is, what's needed, what's necessary, what have you. But I think that the biggest thing that you can say to your team and that you can look to do and want to create is to make sure that you're working with people who are complementary to your skill set. What I see happen most often is that founders, no harm, no foul, you go where it's easy, you go where it's convenient, you go to people who are close to you. And most of the time it are people who do somewhat what you do. It's kind of the nature of the beast. You know, if you're a tech entrepreneur, you tend to hang around other tech entrepreneurs, or if you're a marketer, you tend to hang around other marketers, or if you're a librarian or anything else, right? You just tend to kind of stay within your industry and within similar skill sets to yours. So I see a lot of co-founding teams come together and fail because they have assembled a group of people that they've asked to do different jobs, and people who have accepted having a title with a role and responsibility of different departments that seem super collaborative and strategic. But if behind the hood, everyone's experience is all very duplicative, that is a recipe for disaster. The other thing is something I preach a lot about is understanding how cap tables work and understanding a vesting schedule. This is also my problem with just seeing all of these headlines around kind of vanity metrics or expectations, like, oh, you should have a board of directors. Oh, you should, if you can't pay your team, you should compensate them with equity. And then nobody actually digs into that for women of color. Nobody for people of color explains to them how they should do that. And so what I see a lot is, oh, I think I did the right thing, didn't I? I couldn't afford to hire the person, so I gave them some cash and I gave them 5% of my company, or 2%, or 1%, with no vesting schedule, with no cliff, with no nothing. And then that person doesn't work out 3, 6, 12, 18, 24 months from now. and you've given them a piece of the pie for something that they maybe didn't earn, or they didn't produce, or they didn't pull their weight. And because you didn't have a vesting schedule doesn't mean that you don't compensate people who work with you. You do, but it also means that there is the opportunity to say, okay, well, we're going to work together, and if it's 5%, it's 1% a year, or maybe I expect you to stay here for 2 years, or what have you. So I see a lot of companies get created, and I see a lot of equity get wasted because nobody took the time to understand or to explain or to ask the questions that are really important around strategy that lead to success. You can have a company making $100 million a year, but if you gave away all your cap table to hires on no vesting schedule, what are you doing?
Right. You're practically working for free. All right. This is going to be the final question. I think this is a great one to end on. It's for both of you. Ruben, we'll start with you. Brooke would like to know basically what's next for you, and what can we do? I'm assuming she means the broader community, to support what you're doing, what you're building.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we grow out the team, there's going to be more capital needs. So you'll see more things related to how we raise more capital, for sure, in the near future. You'll see us continuing to hire better people, especially on the engineering, product, and data side. You will see more career paths available for people. So currently we offer 6 different career paths that people can participate in, but we want to make sure that Career Combo is the #1 destination for career advice on the internet. And so, we'll offer new career paths where we won't just work with boot camps, but also with trade schools, colleges, and universities. And the way that you can help is if you know somebody that wants to break into tech and wants to understand these skills today, just tell them to go to careercombo.com/apply. Or if you know people that that are in the job search and want to get connected to companies directly today, they could download the Career Combo app and go to careercombo.com/events. And every single day we have people from companies that are hiring and getting people jobs. And then if you are an entrepreneur and you've met the check boxes around being technical, you've worked in a company before, and you're aligned on a problem, and you want introductions to investors or help with getting into accelerators, I am always open. My email is my name @careercombo.com, and I do that for a lot of people. I'm like an unofficial scout for a lot of funds. So,
all right. There you go. You know what's next for Ruben. You know how you can support him going forward. And Lauren, what's next for you? What's next for Digital Undivided, Project Diane, and how can the audience support your work?
Yeah, we have a lot going on. We have a ton of incredible programs that we're super proud of, and working really closely with our partners who we love and appreciate so much for believing in my vision and the organization and its transformation. We have 4 quarterly research reports coming out this year from Digital Undivided, taking a much deeper dive into our work in data research and evaluation. We've launched a new program, our fellowship program, which I'm super proud of. I've called in a lot of my friends and colleagues who are at the top of their game to serve as mentors. We have a year-long, 12-month program, addressing everything from board governance to board creation, the importance of strategy and structure, understanding cap tables, dilution, business development, press, storytelling, P&L, everything that you could possibly need, understanding your IP, everything that's really central to growing your business. That is now in our fellowship program. We also still have BIG, of course, our pre-accelerator incubator program. And I'm just so thrilled for our fellowship. We've brought in incredible partners, American Express, Prudential, JP Morgan, Chase, Pivotal Ventures, of course, and so many others, Shopify, EY, Gusto, to work with us on HR. That is going to be so transformative for women of color, especially because I also deeply believe that a lot of these programs are taking us out of the workforce as it is, but the workforce of working on our own company. So I think it is really important that we have the opportunity to learn and implement, not just kind of go away, learn, and then come back and realize that the world has already transformed again before our eyes. So that's our latest program that I'm really proud of. We also launched and announced last week a big collaboration with Cosmo called the New C-Suite, which is my brainchild. And I'm so thrilled that Cosmo came on to help me highlight 10 women of color who are coming for the C-suite as leaders of their own businesses. And that is not my child. I just want to be clear. The window is open, and I don't know why somebody is screaming like that, but I want to be clear, they're not my children. Sorry for that. So I'm really excited about the Cosmo partnership. I think, again, going back to changing mainstream's perception, this particular program is my way of changing and highlighting what women of color are capable of doing, what the possibilities are. And so the new C-suite is going to highlight 10 women of color who are coming for the C-suite of their own and who we think are really going to shake up entrepreneurship and the innovation landscape. We've also announced a big partnership with Pine Sol and the Pine Store. All proceeds from the Pine Store come to Digital Undivided. They just launched a new sneaker with Vashti, who designed a sneaker for Digital Undivided and Pine Sol. It's sold out already. So we've got a lot of incredible things in the works. We've got our digital community and our 4 quarterly summits called Undivided We Rise. So there's a lot of ways to get into Digital Undivided. If you need our programs, if you want to see our research, hop over to projectdiane.com. And if you're just generally interested in what we're doing, join us at Undivided Attention during the week on IG. It's our conversation series that takes place at lunchtime with the founder. And then we also have our quarterly summits that are free for you all to attend and join us in on. So really committed to creating accessible opportunity and accessible resources for women of color to win and succeed. And for any of you who I can be helpful to, please, I'm at Lauren Mailian on social and most active on IG.
All right, there we have it. I know we went a little bit over, everyone, but there's so much to get into. This is always what happens during all of our webinars. We are going to continue, of course, this Normalizing Black Wealth conversation. Make sure you sign up for the Culture Bank's newsletter. Get, obviously, the dopest business news for hip hop culture, which is what we bring to you guys every day. And we talk about these types of topics. We have some major partnerships and brands that we're working with to bring you even more content. So be on the lookout. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Ruben. We could not have done this without you. I greatly appreciate your time. And everyone, thank you for joining us. Bye.